Go Loud presents the Talking Bollox podcast.
What you waiting for? Put your back in it. Just a little more. Throw your weight in it now. Tell your body okay. Walk it hard and long. When you finish that,
The hip knocker.
go down, go down, go down.
Something that was said to us on RTE was that I was the sensible one. And I don't agree with that at all. For two reasons. One, I don't like the fact that it brings you down a notch. Because
Doesn't. Absolutely
I
doesn't.
think, in
Because
my eyes, I did. Because, like,
I
how am I the
agree.
sensible one? Do you know what I mean? And two, it puts a lot of pressure on me then. So what? Every time something is said, you have to be the one to step in and be like, oh, lads, this is the sensible thing to do here.
Yeah.
No, that's not right. You know what I mean? There's no difference between me and you. As in... yeah, don't make that face expression. No, I mean,
winding me up on
this
what's going
podcast
on.
doesn't work without me and you. You know what I mean? And I said that at the start, and I'll go
Yeah,
back to
I've
it.
had this conversation before with people outside, like when I just be talking about the podcast. Like, I don't think the podcast would work like if it was me and anyone else, or if it was you and anyone
No,
else.
it definitely
Do you
doesn't.
know what I mean?
It
I think
definitely
it's
doesn't.
like we said earlier in the podcast. I think it's just a good dynamic
Yeah.
because we are cut with the same cloth. We have the same morals, the same principles, and things like that. But we're completely different people.
And we stopped for a half an hour to take a break. Tell the people what happened. No, listen, because I think it is a curveball, and not a lot of people will realise this. Yeah, you weren't happy with the podcast, and this has been from episode 5. We had a bad experience with the podcast, and you set the bar high, and you said to me, I'm not putting a podcast out if it's bad. And I was like, whoa. Because as humans, it's very hard for us to be self-critical. Everyone says like, oh, yeah, blah, 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 I'm grand. You need to look at your flaws and what you're doing wrong. And you've done that from the get-go in this podcast, Terence. And you're like, this needs to be better, that needs to be said, this needs to be put together this way. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, I'm a passenger here. You know what I mean? You're the one driving this. You're the perfectionist on the team. And I don't think a lot of people realise that.
No, I'd agree to an extent. I think, yeah, definitely. I don't agree with all of it. I do see, I don't know, like the perfectionist part, I think that can be took out of context by people. I think I am a perfectionist. But like people think, oh my God, he's saying that because it has to be perfect. I just mean, I'm very self-critical. And I'm very critical if there's something that we're doing on the podcast.
But there's not a lot of people out there like that, Terence. That's what you need to realise.
Yeah, but
and
you have
that's
to
why I
be,
want to
don't you?
strip it back to the fact that if you look at the school you went to, it was a school for behavioural issues.
Yeah.
You know, that's shy. Whereas I went to, like, I don't know what's the term for my school then, but you're the one here who's making sure this podcast is A1.
Well, the both of us do.
No, but you're the one who's making sure, you know what I mean? You're like, boom, this is the bar. It doesn't dip below that.
Yeah, but did we not say before we put out episode 1, we're never putting out a bad podcast?
In fairness, I said episode 1 wasn't even good enough to go out.
Yeah, the two of us sat down and we were like, will we put that out? We can just do another episode 1. Do you know what I mean? We can just start somewhere else.
But what I mean is, you're very self-critical, yeah?
Yeah.
And you don't give yourself enough credit for what you're actually doing. Yeah, I don't think you can disagree with that, because there's a lot of people who will say the same thing.
Yeah.
But I just think you need to just dial it down a tiny bit. I think you're being too harsh on yourself. And this is why I think signing up for the marathon will be good for you. Because the more time you have to dwell on something, the worse your mind gets. And you're like, that needs to change, that needs to change, that needs to change. And it probably comes back to being, that's why we hate being alone.
Yeah.
Because you have too much time to think.
Yeah. I'd
So
agree. I don't know.
you need to, I don't know, focus your energy into something. That's why I think a program like that, where you're like, what am I doing tomorrow? Well, I have to run first anyways. Gets that out of the way.
But that's something, remember I said to you before. No, I don't think I ever said it on the podcast, did I? But I think that discontentment thing.
Yeah.
Never content. Never, ever, ever, ever. Like even when we signed this deal, that was huge for us. We were like, what the fuck, we're at to getting signed. And I was like, that is lethal for a few hours. And then I'm like, right, what's next?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But I hate that. I'd love to be able to sit back and just sort of go, right, like what we're doing here is deadly. Sort of relax for a minute, but it's never ever like that. And it's a good thing and a bad thing though.
It's a good thing for us, and I think it's a bad thing for you.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
It eats at you, but it drives this podcast.
It kills me.
Yeah.
Me. After every single podcast, I'm like, oh, should have did this, should have did that. Do you know what I mean?
But you know what? This is a good insight for people. Where do you think the perfectionism comes from?
From me? Me ADHD.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, but I didn't want to be with one of them people.
I've never thought about it before ever, but there's a fella I follow on TikTok.
You were actually saying this. You rave about him.
Very, very, very intelligent bloke. I can't think of his name. He's so smart, and he breaks down ADHD. Now, the problem I have with the things that he does is I go into the comment section and everybody thinks they have ADHD because some of it is relatable.
Yeah.
And then, like, there's a lot of stuff that he says, and like being a perfectionist, he has a whole video on TikTok about being a perfectionist as ADHD. And like when I was looking at it, I was like, and he talks about discontentment and all, and I only seen it there the other week, and I was like, that's nuts, because I know that's what I have, you know. But when you went to the comment section, it's like, I'm the same, I have ADHD. Shut up, you dope. Do you know what I mean?
I wake up in the morning, I have ADHD.
Do you know what I mean? And there's a lot of that in it, because like some of it is sort of like, oh well, I do that, but come on, never self-diagnose yourself.
Subscribe to this podcast for free on the Go Loud app.
What you waiting for? Put your back in it. Just a little more. Throw your weight in it now. Tell your body you're tense. Walk it hard and long. When you finish that,
The hip knocker.
go down, go down, go down.